Hi, my name is Mary Dennis and I'm here to share with you 5 steps I've developed to help you along your journey towards body acceptance. These are all things that have helped me during my own lifelong struggle with body acceptance and disordered eating. Now, one thing I want to address before I begin is that sometimes when I use the words body acceptance, people think I'm advocating obesity or an unhealthy lifestyle. This is of course not the case, but what I do advocate is to love and accept yourself whatever your current weight or condition, because no one has ever hated themselves into happiness or health. There may be physical changes you do wish to make, but these will not be possible until you address your catalyst for change. So let's have a look at step number 1. Step number 1 is to let go of conditions for self-acceptance. Now, what do I mean by conditions? Conditions are dates, deadlines, rules, or restrictions which, once achieved, will equal your happiness. We're all familiar with them. Things like, once I get a flat stomach, then I will be happy. Once I lose X amount of weight, then I will be happy. Conditions put your happiness in the future when you feel you would have earned the right to be happy by changing what you currently are. They create a vicious cycle. You set an unachievable goal, say losing 50 pounds in 2 months. You fail at this goal because it wasn't achievable in the first place and because your own self-hatred doesn't prove a very sustainable motivator. You spiral down into depression, and then somewhere along the line you get an idea of what might help and you think, I know, I'll lose 50 pounds in 1 month. And then of course the cycle starts again. Now, while it is imperative that we remove these conditions to achieve true body acceptance, it's important to point out that by removing these conditions we're not entering a state of stagnation. Quite the opposite, in fact. By removing the conditions, we're making change all the more likely and possible, because instead of coming from a place of, I have to do this to be happy or loved, we're coming from a place of, I want to do this because it will be fun, exciting, or rewarding. Now, let's address what created the thinking behind these conditions in the first place. Let's move on to number 2. Now, number 2 is to consider the what, how, and the why. So what does it mean to be beautiful? Well, I think the answer to that is that it means something different to everybody. We can certainly see this with our choice of partners. What one person finds most desirable in a man or woman will be completely different to what the next person finds most desirable. If we can accept this to be true for our choice of partners, why do we have a different rule for our own beauty? Well, I think it's because we're constantly being bombarded with images and perceptions of what we should most desire in ourselves. Pick up any magazine aimed at the female market and you will see a headline along the lines of How I Lost 5 Pounds in 5 Days or How I Lost the Baby Weight. Women who don't fit the current beauty paradigm are portrayed in the media as angry, bitter, sexless individuals or as clowns. I was reading a true crime book recently that went so far as to say that females commit murder because they are ugly and therefore so embittered about not being able to find a partner. So why in 2013 do we have this beauty paradigm that is unachievable to most, if not all, women? Well, I think the answer to that is that self-hatred is a big business. If we did not hate ourselves, we would not buy the magazines, the diet shakes, the anti-cellulite creams. Now, this may at first seem like a conspiracy theory, but it's only a conspiracy theory in as much as the theory of supply and demand is a conspiracy. Women demand or desperately seek an end to their self-loathing. And the beauty industry supplies this, ways and means to achieve this, only the catch is that none of the ways and means ever actually work, because they're an outside cure to a problem that is very much internal. I think what we must do to begin to break this cycle of supply and demand is to remove the sources that make us feel like beauty is up here and we are down here. You will know what they are for you, whether it's certain television shows, movies, magazines, websites which contain the terrifying phenomenon known as thinspiration. You will know what makes you feel less than beautiful, and I sincerely urge you to remove these sources as much as possible from your surroundings. So let's move on to step number 3. Step number 3 is to define your beauty. I want you to examine the current beauty ideals. Now this might seem contradictory when we talked in the last step about removing the sources which perpetuate the current beauty ideal, but I feel it is imperative for you to really think about what we're told it means to be beautiful and whether this fits in fact with your own definition of beauty. Do you think it is best to be tall, thin, tanned, so on and so on? Or do you have other things which you find most desirable? We're certainly not encouraged to question these beauty paradigms, and it may at first even seem strange to question whether it is better or best to be thin, for example. Now, once you've begun this line of questioning, you'll come to the big question, which is, do I want what I'm trying to attain? Do I want what I've put so much energy into working towards? Now, when I began to ask these questions is when I began to break through years of mental programming, and I began to question everything I thought was the truth around beauty ideals, and it was immensely freeing for me. Now, as well as freeing, questioning the current beauty paradigm might seem quite frightening at first. You've put so much time and energy into achieving this beauty ideal that you may question, who am I without this struggle? This might be especially true if you're someone who experiences an eating disorder. This is where it's very important to think about who you are. Make a list of your values, passions and ambitions. What do you stand for? What drives you to get out of bed in the morning? Having a strong sense of who you are will make it that much easier to question the beauty paradigms. When you have a strong inner moral compass, you will know whether what you're doing fits with your values, and if your behaviour does not fit with these, it will make it very difficult to continue with that particular behaviour. So let's move on to number 4. Number 4 is to surround yourself with positive reinforcement. Now, you've spent years surrounding yourself with things that tell you that you are less than beautiful and that you don't fit the current beauty paradigm. Now, I want you to find things which remind you of your new definition of beauty, and to surround yourself with these things, to break through that mental programming that has taken place over years. I want you to find beauty also that you relate to. Now, this happened for me when I saw an image of Marilyn Monroe in a white swimsuit. Marilyn Monroe is someone I've always found to be very beautiful, and she certainly looked beautiful in this picture. But what struck me about it is the thought that her thighs looked about as big as mine in this picture. And now it does sound a bit funny to say that this realization spurred my the change in my thinking about body acceptance, but it is largely true. And I think that is because I had never looked at something which I found beautiful and related to it on any level. For something to be beautiful, it had to be separate from myself, because I found my own physical self so disgusting. And yet here I was relating to a picture of a woman who I found undeniably beautiful. So I hope that will illustrate how important it is to find things which illustrate a beauty which you find relatable. Now this might be an image like it was for me, it might be a painting, a quote, anything which reinforces your new feelings about the beauty ideal. Now I want you to have something like this close by at all times, because this will be your reinforcement when you start to fall back into your old ways of thinking. And let's move on to step number 5. Step number 5 is to redefine femininity. And I'll begin with a story which I think best illustrates the point I'm trying to make. Now when I was in elementary school, one day in class a boy put his hand up and he asked, "What does feminine mean?" And just coincidentally, one of my female classmates had come to class wearing a cap which said power on it. Now my teacher at the time looked at the girl and pointed at her cap, and he said, "Feminine means the opposite of that." And that's something which has always stuck with me. And I think we need only examine our language towards femininity to see that my teacher's point of view was one that is unfortunately not so rare. If we take a look at insults for a moment, how many times have you heard someone say as an insult, "You run, kick, sound like a girl"? Or perhaps you've heard someone describe something as girly to explain why they don't like it. On the flip side of this, we have expressions such as man up, be a man, or take it like a man, and all of these essentially meaning be masculine, be powerful, and in control. As women, we are constantly, whether we are aware of it or not, showing the message that to be feminine is to be somehow lacking or frivolous or weak. I would like to introduce the idea to you that femininity is in fact not weakness. And if we take on board the idea that to be feminine is to be weak, then we are powerless to change the world around us. We have to break through these ideas to take back our control. And in fact, what femininity is entirely individual to you. Whatever makes you feel vital and empowered as a woman is what your femininity is. It's not my job or anyone else's to dictate to you what these traits or activities may be. We have to overcome the idea that femininity is somehow synonymous with the colour pink or getting the vapours. Femininity is whatever makes you feel most in touch with who you are as a woman. And once you've taken on board the idea that femininity is in fact synonymous with power and being in control, and it's not at all about being somehow weak or lacking, then it will make it that much easier to question the current ideas about what it is to be a woman and to be beautiful. I hope you've enjoyed my presentation, and I sincerely hope that one of my steps has helped you along your journey towards body acceptance. Thank you.